Scott just made the point.
Jefferson used to be a lot more secure, not just in our
Well, if you're ready to vote third party because the likely GOP nominee is too progressive or too entertaining or too boring, have we got a party for you? Well, we don't actually have it yet, but you can help us invent it right now. I'm Scott Ott, joined now by Stephen Green and Bill Whittle for the first of a three-part series we're calling Inventing the Third Party. Well, if you abandon the GOP and you still want to vote, you'll get stuck with whoever's on the ballot, the Libertarian Party, Conservative Party, Constitution Party, or any number of others. And they all have their deal breakers for you, don't they? But you're not the kind of person who waits for things to happen. So let's get out there and use that can-do American melting pot pie spirit of innovation to bootstrap on a shoestring launch the kind of party that would nominate the kind of president that you'd want to vote for. In this episode, we nail down our domestic policy planks. Episode 2 fashions a foreign policy. And then in our members-only Part 3, we'll deal with how we position the new party in the hearts and minds of the voters. Now, Stephen Green, immigration, marriage, abortion, taxes, welfare, homeland security, and the economy all tend to dominate the domestic policy debate. Does our new third party take a position on each of these questions? And if not, what does it do?
Well, you know, I'm going to have to argue with the premise a little bit. These things, all of these issues don't dominate the debate. They may dominate the airwaves, but in times like these, people are pretty much going to vote their pocketbook. There are two times people really do that. They do it when times are not so good, and they do it when times are really good. And the not so good times, it's because they want some different change. They want some change, some different policies to get things moving again. And at a time like 1984 or 1996, when things are just booming, people vote for the incumbent because, wow, this guy has really set things on fire. And so I would like, in a time like this, to concentrate on growth. Maybe we could call it the growth party, or the Trifecta Party, or the Party of Steve. That would be lovely. But you really want to focus on growth, because this is something. Look, if you want a welfare state, and you know you're going to have to pull some votes off the Democrats. If you need a welfare state, you're going to have growth, because we can't afford this welfare state at 2% growth. It can't be done. And for Republicans, for business, for entrepreneurs, it's the same message. It's the same appeal. If you want to succeed, if you want to get ahead, if you want to pursue your dreams, you need a growth economy. And I would hit that message again and again and again. And I would do what Barack Obama did in 2008. I would go into Democrat strongholds, pursuing that message as hard as possible. I would try and peel away the entire upper Midwest, Michigan, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Iowa, just take all of those. Without that, the Democrats don't have a chance, and neither do the Republicans, because you take Ohio with you, and the GOP has never won a national election without Ohio.
Well, Bill Whittle, we know that you're all about liberty and the pursuit of happiness. Among the plethora of explosive issues in the domestic policy minefield, is there any way to encapsulate the new third party's approach into just a few principles?
Yes, just one principle, and it's called leave us alone. It's basically the motto of this new party ought to be got freedom. Got freedom. I'd put got freedom on every single thing we did. Down in the corner in Helvetica, black Helvetica on white, got freedom. And every single policy, every single law, every single decision we make is going to be based on got freedom. It's really going to be that simple. You know, if you're talking about a domestic policy that could, a party rather, that could actually win huge majorities, huge, you really do have to appeal to both sides of the spectrum. And the one thought I've had, Scott, since we started talking about doing this a couple days ago, this third party thing, I've been thinking a lot about what a conservative party would look like and how much I'd like it. But I thought, you know what would appeal to liberals? What would appeal to liberals? Could you get them? Could you get everybody in the same country like it was at one time, at least more like what it was? And I realized, for example, I've been pretty hard on the F-35. It costs $1 trillion. You know, if you were to cancel that program or not fund it in the future and put $500 billion into aircraft that actually work, you'd have $500 billion left over. Likewise, if you made that deal, if you did that, if you were to get tough on defense procurement, I'm not talking about weakening our defense, on the contrary, I'm talking about strengthening our defense. If you were to come out and say, we expect our money's worth from these defense contractors, and the days of the cost-plus contract bids are over. We are paying fixed price for a certain amount of vehicles, and that's what we're going to pay, so you better do them, and you better do them inexpensively, or else you're going to eat the difference. Now you can go to the progressives and say, look, This is what we were willing to do for our sacred cow defense. Now we have to do the same thing for entitlements. We're not saying that starving people need to be cut off from their assistance. We just can't do that. There's a world where over 40 years we can get them back into being productive citizens who are pulling their own weight and controlling their own destiny. But we can't just start with that. So we have to say, okay, now what are we going to do with these entitlement programs? Let's get the cheaters off the roll. Why don't we start there? You know, $500 billion here, $500 billion there. Pretty soon you're talking about real money. And you take $1 trillion out of the budget every year, you essentially eliminate the debt, which to me is everything. It's everything, is this federal spending's got to go. And the only way you do that is by saying, we'll do this if you do that. And then you make it the people versus Washington, and the people versus waste, and the people versus corruption. And watch out, watch out.
Hey, Scott, could I throw something in just real quick?
Yes, please do, Stephen. Go ahead.
Yeah, but before you finish up, and I know it's going to be great, there are really two GOPs today. There's the state and local level Republican Party, which is vibrant and actually conservative. And then there's the national GOP, which you really ought to spell W-H-I-G.
See ya.
Well, you know, the reason why there are so many explosive issues at the national level is that we've allowed the federal government to control our behavior beyond the scope of the Constitution. Big remote control centralized government is the engine of division that's pitting brother against brother in this broad and diverse land and laying obstacles in the path of happiness for all of us. The third-party platform should start with the first line of the Hippocratic Oath. First, do no harm. Second, assume that market forces will drive most healthy change without government meddling. You and I hold the power to determine our happiness, and we don't need permission from our federal overlords to pursue it. The good of the people emerges from the good of the person. Third, decisions made closer to the voter increase accountability and speed the pace of reform. Local and state representatives should do the lion's share of all governance. The politicians who want to limit your liberty should have to stand behind you at the grocery store and get an earful of what you really think. The person who needs temporary help from government should receive that in the context of loving, accountable community. Fourth, Homeland Security starts at home with an armed citizenry and a sense of responsibility for the well-being of family, community, commonwealth, and country. In other words, if you see something, do something. Finally, our third party doesn't send candidates to Washington to do things for you. We send them there to reduce what the federal government can do to you. We recruit candidates who don't want to go. We equip them with a plan to reduce their own power, and we provide an exit strategy that gets them back home minding their own business as soon as possible. For Bill Whittle, Stephen Green, and the entire Trifecta crew at PJTV.com, I'm Scott Ott.